Welcome to Bible 365. Today is day 86. I never know it offhand before I start. So today is day 86. We're in Joshua. And today, if this is your first time being with me, I'm going through the Bible every day for 365 days. I'm using a chronological Bible reading plan called the One Year Chronological Bible Reading Plan, which you can find on the One Year Chronological Bible online.com. And you can download it. It's a free reading plan. And so you can just use your Bible, read along with me. And before you listen to this, read all of the scriptures that they have for the day so you can get your own thoughts, your own opinions, your own ideas of what is happening in the world of the Israelites at the time. And then you can come in and listen, hear anything that I have to say. And then I would love if you would comment below as well. And so if you get anything out of it, maybe that I didn't jump in and say, or something that you think I may have missed, I would love to hear your views and thoughts on it as well. So today is day 86 and we are in Joshua. So brief history is that Joshua is the person that came after Moses. Moses has died at this point before they crossed over into the land of Israel, which was then the land of Canaan, currently the land of Israel. So I should probably keep calling it the land of Canaan. So the Israelites are there. They have been saved by Moses from slavery in Egypt. They were taken all the way over into the land of Canaan, which is the land that God promised these people back in when he made a covenant with Abraham. And so what we see here is we see sort of the fruit of the promise that was made. And so they're going in and they're taking all the land. And so at this point, they've taken the majority of the land and they've defeated tons of kings. And now we're going to kind of see what happens, because once they got in here, they were supposed to divide the land up between the tribes. So now they're kind of coming in and they're moving into the area and they're developing their nation here in the land of Israel. So we're going to start out with, yesterday we finished off with the land outside, the people that were outside the land. So those 2.5 tribes and the land that was promised to them. Joshua gave them the land. And now we're going in and we're talking about the kings that were defeated here in the land of Canaan. So verse 7, it starts right away. It says, here's a list of the kings of the land that Joshua and the Israelites conquered on the west side of the Jordan, from Baal-Gad in the valley of Lebanon to Mount Halak, which rises towards Seir. So they list 31 kings that were conquered when Joshua came in. And now this was over the period of a few years. So if you remember, the first one was done sort of in one campaign that was more of the southern part of the kingdom, and then the northern part of the kingdom, it took a few years in order to conquer all of these lands and win all these wars against these people. But eventually they did, and there's still some land that they still need to take over that they haven't completely taken yet. But as of this point, these are the amount of kings that they have conquered, so 31. And then we move on right into chapter 13, where it says, now when Joshua had grown old, the Lord said to him, you're very old, and there are still very large areas of land to be taken over. So he starts discussing some of the areas that still needs to be conquered, and that he's actually going to do them, that God is going to go in and he's going to conquer these lands for them. So I find that interesting, because what we have heard so far is that God essentially has given him these lands, but Joshua was supposed to be going in and performing sort of the duty of going to war and killing the people that are in that land. And here it says God is just going to do it on his own. So I'm interested to see if we learn more about that, or what happens from that. And so he just starts naming all of these areas up in Lebanon, all the Sidonians, so all of these things. And like I said, it says in verse 6, I myself will drive them out before the Israelites, and then be sure to allocate this land. So this is going to be land that eventually Israel is going to get as an inheritance. So moving down, he starts talking about the land that is given to each tribe. This is some of the stuff we have read before, because this was given by Moses before. So this was sort of still in the book of Deuteronomy, and this was given to them before they walked over here. If you remember, those 2.5 tribes, we talked about it a little bit yesterday, Reuben, Gad, and a half tribe of Manasseh, which are the sons of Machir. They all got this land on the outside of Canaan. And so even if we look now on a map at the land of Israel, this is not the land that was given them, is not the promised land. It is not what we call the land flowing with milk and honey. This is not the land of Israel. which they are now. However, they did conquer that land. And so God, they asked for that land, these two and a half tribes. And so God did promise them that land as long as they would go in and they would go to war with the rest of the tribes. And God said, I'll give you that land when the land has been conquered, then you can go back and you can live with your wives and children after that. And so that's what they have done. So at this point, their battles are essentially over, and they're going to go in and they're going to live in their land. And so it kind of declares all the land. God declares all the land that they've gotten. And so again, if you look at a map, the half tribe of Manasseh, and then the Levites, of course, we know get no inheritance. So the Reuben, the first tribe of Reuben, is right around. It's in what's now Jordan, and so it's on the other side of the Dead Sea. And then Gad is north of Reuben, like right above the Dead Sea, and then Manasseh is above that. So Manasseh gets this like huge portion of land above that. And again, it's the sons of Machir, so it's only half of the tribe of Manasseh. And so Moses gave this to them before they before they went over into the land of Canaan and went to war in the land of Canaan. But then now they're just receiving it. So if we move on, because again, these are things that we've read. I love that he's reiterating it. I think there's always point and purpose to the fact that this is being said and done over and over and over again. And again, I might even note that the author was changing, right? So it says that Joshua is getting old, and so maybe Joshua or Joshua's scribe maybe was the original author of this, and maybe it's sort of moving on into a new person that might be actually writing down the words of this. And so because Joshua is dying, so but maybe not. Possibly it's a scribe that kind of went with them through everything and dealt with everything. But we do know that Joshua is dying, and we do know that they're sort of moving on from war. So if we move on from here to Joshua 14, Joshua 14:1. We go here and we say, now, in the first verse it says, now these are the areas the Israelites received as an inheritance in the land of Canaan. So this is the area now that we're talking about. This is the land of milk and honey. This is the promised land. And so these are the areas that we're going to see was promised, and some of the areas that were given away. We don't get to all of them today. Eleazar is doing this. Joshua, who his life hasn't ended yet, but his life is coming to an end. He's doing this. And it says the elders of the tribes. So these are the ones that are working together to split up this land to give the inheritance to all of these people. So they're given the land that was promised. Their inheritances were assigned by lot to the 9.5 remaining tribes. So again, Levi is not getting any inheritance, but the other tribes are getting an inheritance. So I want to read verse 11. And in verse 11, this is when Caleb comes and he starts speaking to them. So he says, going to verse 6, it says, now the people of Judah approached Joshua at Gilgal, and Caleb is the one who approached him. So Caleb, if you guys remember, and I'm not sure if today was your first day, you probably don't, but if you've been with me and you've been reading for a while, you're going to remember that Caleb was one of those 10 elders that was sent 40 years ago. They were sent into the land of Canaan in order to spy it out, to see what the people were like, to see what the land was like, to see how the area was built up, right? And so these were like 10 spies, so to speak, that were sent into the land. And then when they came back, most of them were telling everyone how scary it was. These Anakites are in there, and they're the ones who are the Nephilim's descendants, and so they're big and they're scary, and there's no way we can beat them, and they spread fear among all the people. But Caleb came in and said, kind of, with God we can do anything, and so of course we can go in and we can take this land. And because of that, he was not only allowed to survive those 40 years in the wilderness, but he was also given special land. And so at this point, the wars are over, and he's coming in to remind Joshua of the promise that was made to him by God. And so he said, I walked into this land, and this is the land that was promised to me. And that's the land of Hebron. And that was the land that was promised to him. And that's kind of right near the Dead Sea, like kind of smack in the middle. And so he was promised this land. And so Joshua made good on the promise that was made to him and gave him this land. And then if we just read verse 15, it says, then the land had rest from war. So at this point, they're all resting and they're breaking from war. So then we'll move on to the next chapter, 15. And then we go to the allotment for the tribe of Judah. So Caleb is in the tribe of Judah, but he got his special area. And now the rest of the tribe of Judah gets a lot more area. I'm going to try and put a map at the bottom. I'm going to try and link a map to this, probably in the comment section. So at least you can see back then what all the tribes were allotted. Judah was given a ton of land. And so it's mostly down in the southern area, kind of like Dead Sea and below, right across from Edom. And so they were given this huge amount of land. And so some of the things that I found, just there's not a massive, I don't think, amount of information in here, but what are things that I found really interesting was Caleb's daughter. So Caleb is from the tribe of Judah. His daughter obviously is also from the tribe of Judah. And so what she does is she asks him for something. So in verse, in this next section of the chapter, in chapter 15, it says, anyone who goes in and takes this land. So this is Kiriath Arba, which was, and again, looks like it was during the time of war. Kiriath Arba was where the Anakites were. So they were where all like the big people were. So this is probably maybe, I don't know, a harder war, more challenging, whatever it might be. And he said, whoever goes in and wins this will win the hand of my daughter. And he was one of the elders of the tribe. So he was one of the bigger people. And at this point, we know that he's 85 years old. So he's an older guy. But he said he's still in amazing shape, which I thought was really fascinating, because Moses said the same thing. If you remember, so Moses died at 120. But he said he still could see fine. He could walk all the way up the mountain. He had no aches. He had no pains, right? So there wasn't anything going on with him. Well, Caleb sort of says this same exact thing, that the Lord has kept him healthy and strong through all of these things, that he's no different than he was when he was 40. And so just kind of makes me think of even some of the ways that we are in this world, right? That there are some people who, no matter what they do, are in amazing shape. And there are some people that no matter what they do, they can't, they're in terrible shape, whether it be bad physical health or whatever it might be. And so just, again, leading me to believe gifts for certain people, and different gifts for different people, right? So we all have our differences and our goods and bads. I'm sure not everybody there was in amazing condition, but Caleb had a point and a purpose for his life, which was to lead Judah into war and to win these wars and to eventually take the land of Hebron, right? So this was a point and purpose for him. And so God kept him healthy, because normally at 85, we're certainly not leading war, right? Like I think in the military, they retire at like, I don't know, 60, right? I'm making up a number. I'm sure it's anywhere around that area. But, our retirement age in general in this country is 65. So at 85, there's a very little chance that anyone is going to war. So there was something in the way that God kept him healthy and strong in order to lead his people into this war and to win. And again, this is showing God's goodness, right? What he does for his people who honor him and who are faithful to him, which is exactly what Caleb did when he went into the land of Canaan the first time. And then certainly, obviously, we see when he goes back in the land that he's doing it again. So anyway, he said, whoever goes in and defeats these people can get my daughter's hand in marriage. And so obviously that was a high honor. And so these people wanted to do it. So I want to say his nephew, but the wording of this, I'm not 100% sure if it's his nephew. So it says, let's see. So it says, Othniel, son of Kenaz, Caleb's brother, took it. So Othniel was the one who wound up getting her hand in marriage. And he says it was Kenaz, his brother. And so that led me to believe that this guy was his nephew. But I want to actually be a little bit careful with that, because his brother could mean brother in arms. His brother could mean his physical, actual brother. His brother could mean because the kids got married, maybe they became brothers after that. So I sort of want to be careful in noting that, because they actually don't say his nephew. But maybe it was his nephew. I'm putting that out there as, again, like in some ways a teaching tool, right? Our literalness needs to be careful, right? So could it have literally been his brother? Absolutely. We haven't heard his name before here. So it could have been his actual brother, but I just want to be careful in the way in which it says it. It might be his brother, but they might use brother in a couple of different ways. So contextually, we're not 100% sure that this was his nephew. Just putting that one out there. But this guy won the area, and then his daughter does some interesting stuff afterwards, which just a little insight into who she is, and really is sort of into the power that women did have. Like, it wasn't that her voice wasn't heard. So she did have power when she spoke to her dad and to her husband. So her husband, in verse 18, she urged him to ask her father for a field. And so obviously her father gave her a field. They got the Negev, which again, if we look, I'm pretty sure, because there are two different ones, but there's one that's like sort of all the way down, like if you kind of go to this point in Israel, it's kind of all the way down south in Israel. And what it looks like is it looks kind of like it's a lot of desert land. But they did, so she got that. So she got a field, and and it looks like she has a donkey. And then her dad asked her, "What can I do for you?" And she said, "Since you've given me land in the Negev, can you also give me water?" Which would make complete sense considering that they are in a drier land and they would need water. And he did, and he gave her water. So she seems smart, and she seems to have a voice, and she seems to speak up and know what is needed when it's needed. Now, will this ever come up again? I'm not really sure, but I thought it was an interesting point. And it's always important that if these unusual things are written, then it's probably good to note why they would be written. And so we may see her again. I don't know. We'll have to find out. Or we may never see her again. I don't know. But there is power behind her, and there is good in what she does. She seems like she's smart. So, finishing on that note, because that's the end of our section that we got going on here. Tomorrow we will be back with more numbers. If this was a blessing to you guys, I would love if you liked it, shared it, subscribed to the channel, and followed along with me each day. And of course, always, always, always read first, or read whenever. I just really want you to read your Bible and see what the words say to you. And I know they say one thing, but God inspires us when we read to see it in a way that affects our lives. And so I want that for you guys as much as I want it for myself. So keep reading. I'll see you next time.